Aspektus organized an opening event for our competition on history-related educational historical video clips, and we were interested in the thoughts on the subject of our history teaching colleagues.
Míg a későbbi korszakokról jönnek elő családi történetek, itt alig.
While family histories turn up in later historical periods, here rarely. I was fortunate, however, to have held a small card box, which perhaps a great-grandfather had made in a Russian prison camp. Every student who begins their studies in my class brings in, by 5th grade, their treasures. This could be a copper kettle or an old 100 bill or a photo of a turbant at Lake Balaton, but in this case, it was a small box. With the objects come the stories, but on this box there was only an inscription and a date, and the child knew only that his ancestor had made this box in Russian imprisonment. The story, however, was not with it, only the box.
Hogy ezt az ő őse készítette orosz fogságban. De a történet már nem volt meg hozzá, csak a doboz.
Itt azért van egy-két olyan momentum, amire rá lehetne a figyelmet irányítani, főleg a 16-os mondjuk az erdély.
There are a few issues which could be highlighted. For instance, the question of Transylvania in 1916, the Romanian offensive which added a new dimension to the World War as the Romanians attacked the borders of Hungary. There were similar battles in 1914 as well, in the Carpathians, but the people of Transylvania felt this to be explicitly a battle of national defense. Also, in 1916 was the flight of Hungarians from Transylvania, who were settled in half of the country. The memories of this could be lasting for the students if they look into this question, and this could be another aspect to the First World War.
Hogyha ennek utána néznek, ez megint egy más aspektusát adhatja, ha már itt az aspektus kifejezést használhatjuk, adhatja az első világháborúnak.
Megvan annak a lehetősége, hogy a diákutaztatási programokon keresztül, többek között a Rákóczi Szövetségen keresztül.
We have a possibility to take the children specifically within the program of the Rákóczi Association, if not to the Galicia front, which now is in Ukraine, but at least to the Polish territory. Or in Transylvania, the Tömösi Pass, the Ojtosi Strait, the area of Kerts where there are German military cemeteries, in the framework of complex regional analysis of these battlefields. In the same vein, we could go to the territory of the Isonzo battles, and if we are talking about 1916, there is an outstanding personality of this period, General Sándor Szurmai, whose life story would be worth examining. He was on the front for 3 years from 1914 to 1916, and was the monarchy's last minister of defense.
Az életútját érdemes végigjárni. Ugye ő gyakorlatilag 3 éven keresztül volt kinn a fronton, 14, 15, 16-ban is szerepet vállalt, és hát ő volt az utolsó hadügyminiszter a monarchiának, tehát érdemes végigjárni az ő útját.
Az ifjúságot így a technikán keresztül lehet megszólítani, tehát gyakorlatilag lehet, hogy maga a cél.
Youth today can be reached through technology. Perhaps the goal won't be particularly important for the students, but the technology through which they will create the project will interest them. There will be a few students the competition will bring, and for whom the subject is not interesting, but the technology will be.
Azt megvalósító technikai rendszernek a használata fog idehozni a versenybe.
There are those, however, for whom World War I is interesting from additional perspectives.
Én visszafelé vizsgálom az első világháború hatását.
I am examining the effect of World War I looking back from the viewpoint of the Trianon drama. I live that drama even today. For me, the reality of the historical events are important only in how the events of World War I played a role in the Trianon coming about. Because of my own background, I was asked to research the series of heroic acts of the Hungarian Jews during First World War.
The World War and the accompanying treaty, commonly referred to as the Trianon Dictate, naturally has a different meaning for us than for our linguistic relations, the Finns or the Estonians. Szilárd Tóth began his career as a Hungarian linguistic instructor at Tartu University, but he now teaches the Estonian language in the Baltic border city of Narva to the Russians living there.
Számunkra az első világháború ugye Trianonnal a magyar etnikai terület nagy részének.
If for us as Hungarians, we view World War I as something which came with a great loss, then for the Estonians, it is just the opposite. In 1920, simultaneously with the signing of the peace treaty at Trianon, the Estonian peace treaty was signed, the result of which was the formation of the state of Estonia. So World War I brought about a successful period of events for Estonians.
Végül is egy sikeres történelmi folyamatot hozott létre, aminek következtében az észt állam létrejött.
Even though the events of World War I occurred over 100 years ago, there are many unsettled questions which even today remain unanswered. For instance, exactly what was the objective of this war? This is a question debated not only by historians but also by political scientists even today at the London School of Economics, where György Schöpflin taught for several decades.
Egy legnagyobb probléma az volt, hogy a fegyverek, tehát a lövedékek...
The greatest problem was that the power of the weaponry and the efficiency of the artillery was far greater than that of the communication of the time. It was very difficult to coordinate the artillery and the communication. Often many died because they did not know where the artillery should fire. 1916 was the year of the Brusilov offensive, June the 4th, which was considered a great achievement by the Allied powers. On one hand, they were able to essentially annihilate the Austro-Hungarian army, and on the other hand, basically end the advancing force of Verdun.
Gyakorlatilag megsemmisítette az osztrák-magyar hadsereget. Másrészt Verdunre erősödő nyomásnak effektíve véget vetett.
Ha a térképre nézünk, akkor azt mondhatjuk, hogy váltakozó sikeresztendő volt a monarchia szempontjából.
If one looks at the map, one can say that the year of 1916 was a year of varying triumphs for the monarchy, such as those achieved categorically in the Balkans with the occupation of Montenegro and Albania. On the Eastern Front, the Brusilov offensive meant a great defeat for the monarchy, while on the Italian front, the painful event of the loss of Gecse forced the monarchy to surrender the Deberdo Plateau, leaving it in a far worse position in fighting Italy than previously. In the same year, the worst was to come with the Romanian invasion at the end of August, which could have easily meant the end of the monarchy's role in the war. It's another thing that by the end of the year, with German aid, that apparent threat was reversed, and the Central Powers Army was able to successfully occupy Romania.
Tulajdonképpen ellentétébe fordult át, és Romániát szinte teljesen sikerült megszállnia a központi hatalmak seregeinek. The
Austro-Hungarian and the German troops had an excellent cooperation in both battle and strategy, and plainly fighting together provided the soldiers with emotions and experiences which formed their relationships for a long time to come, not to a society, not to a political system, but to the other person. There is another very important point. The Austro-Hungarian monarchy, within it Hungary and the German Empire all end the war on the side of the conquered, and both European great powers are forced to sign a peace dictate in which a significant part of their territories are lost, and by which they were not only defeated, but also humiliated.
A monarchia szempontjából pedig én azt gondolom, hogy
1916 was for the monarchy a political milestone in that a long period ended with the death of Franz Joseph, so that symbolically people knew that they could no longer count on those times which they could count on under Franz Joseph, or that the so-called golden years of peacetime would return following the war. This was a psychological milestone, but for the lifespan of the monarchy, 1916 was a time of defeat. Although there was a triumph in 1915, there was defeat in 1916 with the invasion by Romania, which was corrected with the aid of the Germans and resulted in the occupation of Bucharest. Also, the restriction of general services was not yet as common as it was to become in 1917 to 1918. The general public was feeling the consequences of the war, but it was far from what it would become to feel later. And finally, the monarchy's army, in spite of all the predictions by the monarchy's radical critics, did not collapse along ethnic lines. In fact, armies more homogeneous than the monarchies were showing signs of collapse.
Kevésbé inhomogén hadseregek mutatták a bomlás elejét, mint a monarchia.
Mert 915 elejétől lényegében véve a tartalékos tisztek vették át.
From the beginning of 1915, the reserve officers essentially took over the direction of the monarchy's army. Military historical narrative usually emphasizes 1916 because the damage brought about the Brusilov offensive significantly affected later warfare conducted by the monarchy, and it is not an overstatement to say that the monarchy's army had reached the limits of its power, as it was only with significant German aid was it able to continue fighting.
It was following the Brusilov offensive that it became clear that an independent Poland would be established following the war, but this made any compromise between the Central Powers and Russia virtually impossible.
Poland was divided since the end of 18th century between three empires. So when finally, after 123 years, these three empires clashed, that is two against one, Austro-Hungarian and German empires against Russian Empire. That was perceived by some group of Poles as a chance to get independence finally, because whenever these three empires were in solidarity, there was no chance for Poland to win against all three. But at the same time, throughout this more than 1 century, many Poles living in a particular part of the former Poland, being for more than 1 century part of Russia, Austria, Hungary and Germany, became more and more, so to speak, adapted to this kind of living, and many, due to these consequences of 1 century of foreign domination, they accepted this as a natural state. Not all, but many of Poles. That's why in Austro-Hungarian part of the empire, of course, most of Poles accepted the war against Russia as natural our war to liberate most of Poland that was taken by Russia. But in the Russian part of the former Polish kingdom, many inhabitants of this part began to accept the fact that they are subjects of the Tsar. And that's why in 1914 a large part of Polish society under Russian domination accepted the war also as ours. We would fight, we, Poles and Russians, would fight not as much against Austro-Hungary, but against Germany, that was treated as another great enemy of Poland, either Germany or Russia. So from that perspective, for example, Poles living in Galicia under Austro-Hungarian rule treated, let's say, Hungarian army as allies, as natural helpers in the same cause.
In December 1916, in the court of St. Petersburg, a group of aristocrats assassinate the favorite of Alexandra Fyodorovna, Gregory Rasputin. Amongst the assassins was not only the Russian Felix Yusupov, but also the Romanian in name as well, Puriskevich of Bessarabia.
This had nothing to do with the Romanian national movement, as Puriskevich and some of those like him in the national ethnic border regions were radical Russian nationalists. It makes no difference that Puriskevich or the member of the Duma who in 1903 organized the Jewish pogroms in Bessarabia, Krusevan, had unquestionably Romanian names, but they had absolutely no connection with the Romanian national movements in Bessarabia. They were both pure Russian nationalists who were resolute enemies of any sort of independent or separatist movements. Burian, the Austro-Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs in 1916, was dismissed, and this is clearly due to the death of Franz Joseph. With the departing of the sovereign, a new course was taken in the monarchy's foreign policy with the entrance of Charles IV and his circle. Burian was replaced in December 1916 by Ottokar Czernin.
This was a very important year. One could call it even a breaking point in the diplomatic history of Polish efforts to gain acknowledgement of their independence. Because after 2 years' war, German general staff decided that it needs new manpower. Because German and Austro-Hungarian armies already had occupied large territories of former Russian part of Poland with many millions inhabitants, these inhabitants couldn't be recruited on legal basis to German army. But after Germany and Austro-Hungary would declare that they would form a new independent or at least autonomous Polish state from territories taken from Tsarist part of Poland, then they believed, I mean German general staff, they would be able to recruit many volunteers, thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of volunteers. Wilhelm II and Franz Josef declared on November 5th that there would be independent Poland. They declared this as not just a war goal, but as the beginning of a new reality, political reality. With that declaration, or following that declaration, the first institutions became to be formed under German-Austrian tutelage, institutions of Polish government, Polish police, Polish legal system, Polish administration. Without these 2 years between the end of 1916, it opened a leak through which other national projects were able to enter, so to speak, political imagination of Western statesmen. If Poland should be created, then maybe some other nations have also rights to organize either anew or for the first time their statehood. And this was used, yes, effectively by Czech politicians, especially by a very adroit diplomat as Edvard Beneš, and even more so by influential intellectual as Masaryk.
Тиса Иштван, вот если посмотрим его деятельность кануна Первой мировой войны.
If we examine István Tisa's conduct preceding the breakout of the First World War, and particularly if we look at what was worrying him in 1912 and 1913, it turns out that early on he was aware of the presence of Romanians in Transylvania, which I think meant a definite threat to the territorial integrity of Transylvania. Tisza made certain endeavors to integrate the Romanian politicians in Transylvania into Hungarian political life, and for that reason offered various positions to them. He was willing to give up even a ministerial post.
A németek azok egyértelműen bejelentik 1916 áprilisában, hogy nekik Lengyelország kell.
Following a long period of hesitation, the Germans reject the proposal of an Austro-Polish solution, which would have annexed the Kingdom of Poland to Austria-Hungary, and in April of 1916, Germany announces unequivocally its demand for an independent Poland. Tisza now pleads for the Polish question to be abandoned and instead to concentrate on the Romanians. The Belvedere group working in the spirit of Franz Ferdinand now takes control. Although Ottokar Csernin's national identity is debated, he was ethnically Czech, as was Klam Martinic, and his vision for the future of the monarchy was completely different to Tisza's or Burján's. The Belvedere group's idea was to convert the monarchy into a republic with a Slavic character. This was unacceptable to Hungarian foreign policy, and Czernin was the monarchy's dual foreign minister up until April 1918.
Külpolitikának abszolútan nem felel meg, és Csernin jön, és egészen 18 áprilisáig ő a külügyminiszter, közös külügyminiszter.
Amikor birodalmak szétesnek, vagy esetleg kimerülnek,
when empires collapse or are exhausted, other players enter to fill the void. In this respect, we have the revival of Poland, the formation of Great Romania, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Albania a bit earlier in 1913. These are all new nations. At the same time, the Ottoman Empire collapses and a new Turkey is built on its ruins, at the price of a great war, which we often forget.
Óriási háború árán, amiről hajlamosak vagyunk megfeledkezni.
A történelmet nem lehet úgy nézni, én így gondolom.
People do not always recognize their own interests. This is so even in their private lives.
A monarchia csak valamennyire volt a miénk, azért elég sokan.
The monarchy was ours only in part. Many Hungarians thought of the Austrian army which was enlisting them to fight in 1914 as the same one which defeated them in 1848. Can the Austrian imperial army be trusted? The legitimists, the royalists loyal to the Habsburgs, amongst the Hungarians probably thought so, but there were many in Hungary who thought differently and didn't trust Vienna. Then there is the question of Tisza. At the beginning, Tisza opposed the war. He felt Hungary had no need to wage war with Serbia, and he acquiesced only when he received the guarantee that Germany would support the monarchy in the war. What would have happened had Tisza continued to oppose the war? I don't know.
Én abból indulok ki, hogy az, hogy megszűnt egy ilyen közép-európai...
I feel that the dissolution of the Central European power, which we call the Habsburg monarchy, came from the misrecognition of their interests. This was mainly on the part of the British, who felt the monarchy unnecessary for the continental balance of power. The French certainly took this course, and they thought that with the dissolution of the monarchy, the various resulting nation-states could be drawn under a sphere of French influence. Basically, they were mistaken.
Valami fajta francia érdekszférát kialakítani, szóval magyarán szólva rosszul gondolták a dolgokat.
How does Gábor Dombovári, the president of the organizing association of this event, view the historical videoclip project organized compared to the one 2 years ago?
Az első 2 évvel ezelőtt megrendezett klipversenyünk is, ugye a hozzá kapcsolódó történelmi vitaestünk azért.
Our first documentary video clip competition and accompanying evening of debate were definitely successful. I think we can add to this by taking the competition to even more places, producing even better submissions. We are participating in the hope that more and better projects will be submitted to the competition.
Indulunk neki, hogy minél több sikeres és jó pályamű érkezik be erre a klipversenyre.